Man, it has been a good time for female Transformers in general, right? Like, these didn't used to be a thing, but then Power of the Primes hit and we got like half a dozen new Arcees, several for real Elitas, who's never seriously gotten a figure before outside of some minor repaints, new Chromia, characters like Firestar and Moonracer who've never had a real figure before. I mean, not a lot of those are good, in fact, most are pretty bad, but I'm still glad to be getting them. And we are even having new Prime Arcees show up. So it's coming to the point where there are so many different, though excessively similar Arcees, it's become like, this is my friend Becky, Becca, Anorexic Becky, Rebecca, the bitchy Rebecca, Slutty Rebecca, and Rebecca 2, the Rebeccaning. That's right, I made that last short to jog all your memories so I could do this. It's 86 Arcee. 86. I'm going to get this out of the way right now. This is absolutely better than the Arcee, but it is not in any way better than the Generations figure, because this is a complete side grade of that figure, because it's literally the exact same one. Don't believe me? Look. It's literally the same damn thing, but they stretch the dimensions horizontally. Everything is several percent wider than it used to be, but it's all amazingly the same parts. The back of her head even has the construction setup for the light piping. The arms have identical sculpting, though these ports have been filled in. When viewed from the side, you can see that the chest has the exact same mechanism. Hell, the shoulders have the exact same amount of limited upwards range because of the design of the ball joints. The top section of the backpack is even the same. From the waist up, this is the exact same figure, in just more muted, uglier colors. The paint job may be slightly more accurate to the movie, but there is no denying that the desaturated nature of them is just less attractive. Every time I look at the Generations figure, then back at the 86 one, I feel like I just stared into a bright light, and now my eyes are having a hard time adjusting back to normal. Now from the waist down, these are in fact quite different. The Generations figure has a far shapelier figure, with a significantly more human abdomen, as opposed to the 86's half-painted robo-gut. Though she still has the belly button, that's how you know it's authentic. I will say that the lack of gray on the sides here is kind of a slap in the face. Like, come on, half this figure is reused from 8 years ago. It's small, the engineering isn't great, you really couldn't have bothered spending a tiny amount more paint on that? Honestly, the vibe I'm getting from this thing is it's Generations, but also less sexy. Like, the 2014 figure has some thick-ass thighs, which was rather forward-thinking, because I don't think thick was a word that was being thrown around just yet back then. So Hasbro had some real foresight on what was going to be considered attractive in the next 5 years or so. This new Arcee is far slimmer in the legs, which you would think would allow it to get a deeper knee bend, but honestly, if anything, it's very slightly less acute of an angle that she can reach. Also, really, what is with these serious gaps in the backs of her legs? This figure cost almost twice as much as the 2014 fig did back in the day, and it's the exact same size, but they still cheaped out on the amount of plastic they used. I will say that I'm glad to see Arcee not be sexualized for once. Like, no crotch slit and everything. Damn, guys, that's some restraint for toy designers. For some reason that I literally can't comprehend. Why? It's a fucking robot, and a child's toy to boot! I hate it when people try to defend a figure by saying that you're looking too hard into a child's toy, as though children don't deserve good toys. But sometimes it is really important to remember that this is a kid's toy. Anyways, yes, I'm glad that this isn't being weirdly sexualized for once, but I can't say that the designers have really worked in much style here to replace it. Like, they've got Arcee minus the thick-ass proportions, but that's all it is. There's nothing new added to replace that, and the result is that the overall sculpt and colors here are a bit boring. I will say that the quality seems to be pretty on point, the joints are all tight and they hold pose as well, and nothing feels like it's going to break. Part of dethickifying her seems to have been moving some of that mass to all of her narrowest areas, so limbs that seemed like they were about to snap a 4 really aren't at risk anymore. And with the tight joints comes the lack of a problem that I've been told to worry about. Apparently, some people are having a real issue with the fact that her torso doesn't really peg in. So she winds up extending at the waist to establish dominance, like she's the village chief from Resident Evil 4, or like she's Nicey. And while yes, a solid snap-in would have been satisfying, I find that the joint is stiff enough that it's not actually much of a problem. I've never had this joint accidentally extend without trying to extend it on purpose. That sentence was basically 2 ways of saying the exact same thing. Head kind of sucks. It's the same one as the Generations figure, but with the scaling making it a bit bigger, it becomes kind of uncanny. The helmet is good, having all the details to really match up with the movie design, looking a bit better than the ER figure in that regard. But the face is ever so slightly creepy. It's got the energy of those old Rankin Bass claymation movies. It's most unsettling head-on, but from the side, I find I'm not so skeeved out by it. So on looks, this thing is not an improvement over the Generations figure. It's mostly the same thing with a worse backpack, and the potential positive to you that it's not so sexualized. Though, if you tend to align a bit more with Jobby, that may be a serious negative to you. Or it could just be a complete neutral to you, like I'm finding it to be. The quality is good, the joints are a bit tighter than on my Takara Arcee, and any potentially fragile parts have been made slightly more robust. Though I didn't really have any complaints with the older figure, and I've not quite seen anyone complaining about the older figure breaking. So as I said earlier, this is just a side grade. It's not better, just different. On looks alone, you are probably going to find that the Generations figure could fit your 86 display almost exactly as well. Accessories are absolutely a downgrade though. She only comes with the same gun that the other figure originally did. But the Gen C also came with a second gun and a pair of swords. I understand why the second gun didn't come because it looked like a fucking dildo, and I even understand the swords because, you know, Arcee's not known for those. But why are we paying more than ever before and getting less when we have something so direct to compare this to? Like, they really shot themselves in the foot by using the other figure's torso, since it gives us full justification to say, look what we got back then versus now. And reusing the same accessory with no change to the tooling is kind of the final insult. Like they were already cheaping out, they just needed to do it a little harder, just one little bit more of a fuck you. Posability on this you'd think would be night and day, but it's almost not better at all. Head has way more tilt up than the other figure, and that's more than normal. Same tilt forward as before, but it's far more terrifying now. Shoulders can't pull a 90, elbows seem slightly closer to a maximum, no wrists, waist swivel, and I think I'm going to have to call this maximum ab crunch. She can kick forward okay, which is way worse than on the other figure, out to the side badly, better than the other figure, though you can cheat that, which you can't here, and back not at all. So that's slightly worse than the Generations figure. Extreme knees and feet with less tilt up, but the same amount down, and a rocker which the other one didn't have. So again, really kind of a side grade. She's got more ab action, but everything else is just about the same. A bit more neck, maybe more elbow, definitely less leg, and then slightly more feet. Transformation is also a serious downgrade. This isn't wretched like the ER figure's transformation, but it is almost exactly as much of a shell former that doesn't need the actual robot. It's more complex, and you'd have to drive more pins out, plus it would take the chest and head with it, but you could completely separate the two and be left with a full car and most of a robot. As much as this thing is just a retool of the Gen C, the transformation does manage to be very different, though kind of running along the same themes and ideas. It's not a terrible transformation, but the other one is a lot of fun, and this one kind of isn't. It's tolerable, but not something that you're going to do just for the fun of a transformation. And then the end result is the same damn thing, with slightly more accurate colors and an ugly hinge here. Hell, I'm pretty sure that if the cars weren't hot pink and Pepto-Bismol, you'd have a hard time telling which is which, they are so close to being identical. The biggest difference is that these back panels aren't white, and the rear tires are slightly more covered. Outside of that, the rear of the car is a bit more angular, but I find it hilarious how the version of Arcee who actually forms the back of the car out of her ass is showing off way less of her ass in the back of the car. They reuse so much of this mold, even the vertical stabilizer on top is the exact same part. Hell, this is slightly less quality because there is a gap between the dash and the windshield where there is none on the Generations figure. The internals of the car mode were more intricately molded, and the steering wheel was not only present on the older figure, where it's not here, but it's also a separate piece pegged into the dashboard for the extra touch of quality. Both roll okay, even though they have a lot of kibble trying to get close enough to the ground for them to grind on. So the alt mode is fine, but it's only an improvement if you're utterly pedantic about the color of the side panels of the car, and if you don't care that the trunk section looks infinitely worse. And that's why I have to say that this is a complete side grade. It's not an improvement. Basically, you're sacrificing transformation and accessories to get mildly improved posing, and a slightly new aesthetic that may align more with your tastes, or not. You could argue that the figure is also more available, being that it's only coming out now, but if you can tolerate a slightly more offset of colors in the name of a cooler looking figure, the non-Takara version of the Generations Arcee is still available on the BBTS for $1 less than this is. I cannot stress enough just how much these are the same thing. And it's not like I'm insulted by this, they're basically just re-releasing the older figure with a new coat of paint. That's all this really is. The old one is selling for almost the same price now, so it's not like there's a huge discrepancy with how much you have to pay to get a decent representation of this character. The simple fact of the matter is that if you have the other one, you don't need this. Either looks about exactly as good for a movie display, and neither one is crushing the other in a category unopposed. The old figure has better accessories and, more importantly, a better transformation. If you value that, which I do, I say go with that version. This one has better posing. If you value that, you should still probably think about it because this isn't really that much better. It's better for sure, but not like, hold your horses, I need this better. I swear it's impossible to make a what's the best Arcee, because her figures are either so wildly different, or in this case, so wildly the same that you just can't rank them. It's not a waste of your money, unless you have the other one. And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please, share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.